Hello! So today we're going to be talking about Yona of the Dawn. This is a video I've been meaning to make for a while because I've been caught up on the series, the published novels, because that's the only way I know how to buy them. I don't think there's any way to read them weekly except for scans. Anyway, I'm caught up on the series and I've been meaning to make this video for a while. There's just been a lot of really exciting One Piece stuff that I've been wanting to make. But now we're going to talk about Yona. This is going to be, as the title says, pretty much spoiler free. If you are very spoiler sensitive, then I would say skip this one, just because this is such a slow build series that I have to spoil some of the reveals and some of the plot points that happen in like volume 7 or 8 or something like that in order to just give you a baseline of what this series is, because it just takes a long time for it to actually like slot into place so that we can start moving forward. This is a really ambitious series. It does a lot wonderfully, so that means that the setup takes a little bit longer. But personally, I wouldn't consider anything that I say in this video a spoiler, so that's why it's labeled spoiler free. You should hang out with me and watch it. The reason I'm keeping it spoiler free is because when I did my tier ranking of every manga series that I've read video, I ranked Yona really high, and a load of people commented saying, wow, if Yona's up here in the S tier with the greats, with so many great series, then maybe I actually need to check it out. Which makes sense because I personally don't really read this genre, shoujo, or category rather. I don't read this category very much at all, so probably the people who tend to watch my videos are, you know, more shonen or seinen based readers. So I'm here to tell you this series is extraordinary, though it has a really rough start. So if you're a fan of the series, the beginning of this review will be a little bit negative, but you know, we'll get into the praise. So the setup of the series is that Yona is a 16-year-old princess and she acts like it. She is very naive. She's very young for her age. She comes off closer to like 14, very ignorant of politics, of her kingdom's needs, and of really anything. She's a young girl who's been pampered her whole life. Series kicks off when her childhood crush, also her cousin, kills her father and seizes the throne. So Yona near dies too, but she's saved by her other childhood friend and bodyguard, Hawk, and Yona and Hawk flee while the coup is happening and while the childhood crush, Suwon, takes the throne. Also, there's this mythical thing where there's this, I think it was the Crimson Being of the Dawn. It's been a minute since I read the beginning of this, so I don't remember the exact title, but it's super obvious that it's Yona that is reincarnated occasionally. And there's also 4 dragons that too are reincarnated, and they are compelled to be around their leader, the Crimson One of the Dawn. What is it? Crimson Dragon King. Okay. So even though the series tries to kind of detour you and is like, but Yona's from the Wind Tribe, so probably not her, right? It's like, it's in the title. Everything that's happening is like making the story show that people are compelled to be around her. Like, it's obvious. So even though that reveal comes a few volumes in, you know, that's what the story is. It's Yona learning to protect her kingdom with her bodyguard and the 4 dragons that we pick up along the way. And the story really begins once we have all of our characters in place. So some things about the beginning of the story. From the jump, Suwon, the one who did the coup and has seized the throne, it's very clear that there's more to this than just he's the bad guy. He grew up with Yona and Hawk. It's very clear that he has very strong feelings for them and that this is hard for him. And it's clear that there's a lot going on. It doesn't make us, the reader, condone Suwon or anything that he does, but it's just very clear that this is going to be a nuanced situation. And because of that, in the beginning, which I found to be really rough, Suwon was what carried the story. The intrigue around him and what his true motivations were and what the deeper things going on there was what made me keep reading. And that really paid off because while I even still don't have all the answers, the political maneuvering in this series is wonderfully done. What I've described to you as the setup of the series, spoiled princess, has to go on the run with her bodyguard, she's the chosen one, political coup, like all the things I've told you about sound really generic. You may have already been tempted to click off the video, but I promise you there's so much more to the story. You just have to get through the beginning, because the beginning will try to convince you that there's not much to it, or at least it tried to convince me of that. On top of that, the pacing in the beginning is kind of rough, which some of y'all may be more experienced manga readers, so you may have more grace for that because you understand that, you know, there's kind of a knife to the throat at the beginning of series for untested mangaka, because they're like, please don't cancel me, let me show you what the series can do. So because of that, it's a lot of rushing through events and rushing through new locations and new characters to get everything into place so that the story can begin. And because it's such an ambitious story, it takes some time to do that. So for several volumes, I felt like we were at a speed run. I looked back and it looks like it was around volume 5 that I actually started getting emotionally invested in Yona and her personal journey. And it was around volume 13 that I finally was hooked fully in, really enjoying the series. There were still some highs and lows. I know that's not a very good pitch. Now that I've spent a good amount of time making you consider, maybe I'm not going to read this series, let me try to convince you why it's so well worth it. Also, I have a cold. Sorry if my voice is sounding as bad to you as it sounds to me in my head. Yona is one of the best female protagonists I have read. She starts off as this ignorant, naive, spoiled brat. And I think that it's clear from the beginning that she's written this way because we're going to have character growth. But it takes some time to get that character growth, so you gotta suffer a little bit. But my goodness, is the character growth some of the most satisfying I've read. Starting with her asking her bodyguard, Hawk, to teach her how to fight so that she can defend herself, so that she can defend the people that she cares about when she's put in another moment of danger. And she also shakes off her selfishness. When we meet one of the characters that will be an influential part of the plot, at first she wants him to join for her own sake. But then once we get to see a little bit of his struggles and his backstory and learn more about where he came from and what he's been through, she asks him to join again, but this time it's for his sake. We'll give you a home and a family, and we'll look you in the eyes. He's a character that's never received a name, and she gives him his first name based on his personality and his kindness, and she shows him that she really values him as a person and cares for him. It means so much to him that he even wakes up his pet squirrel to tell him his name. It's the sweetest scene, and if you're curious, Blue Dragon and Yellow Dragon are my favorites. But she also, as she travels and as she goes to different regions in the kingdom, she realizes how much people have suffered under her father's rule. Her father was a good man. He was a good father. He was a kind person. But that doesn't mean that he was a good leader. And she has to see firsthand what that looks like, and she has to reckon with it while grieving, because she does. We do actually get to see her explore her emotions once she shakes off her shock and once, the story gets into place so that we can start slowing down and doing some things. She's still grieving the loss of a man that she loved, but she also has to reckon with the fact that the people also have had to grieve because of the amount of suffering that they've incurred while he was leading them. This is an incredibly difficult thing to balance and for her to work through, and she does. She does it so well. Time and time again, we see her get new information, meet new people, see more of this world, and quickly adjust, mature, and grow. We see her recognize her blind spots that she's had up to this point for the needs of the people, and we see her adjust and dedicate her life to helping these people in small scale ways and in very large scale ways. She's not in the kingdom anymore, or she's not on the throne. She was never on the throne. She's not in the palace anymore. She's not in a leadership position anymore, but she's leading her people now in the story more so than she ever would have if she had been left where she was at the beginning. Along with that, we also see other royals around the same age as Yona, the next generation of royals who too have been spoiled spoiled, who have been pampered, who have had major blind spots in how the kingdom is being run and how the people are suffering. And we get to see them as well have to have those character arcs, have to learn and have to be challenged to become servant leaders. Being a leader by meeting the people's needs. Side note, I don't actually like Tae-joon, or at least I really, really didn't like him at the start. He's okay now, but I'm still not a fangirl. I know it's a super unpopular opinion within the fandom, but the mangaka just leaned way too far into the humor with him, like the over-the-top humor, and it wasn't funny to me. Now I want to talk about Yona's femininity, because Yona, I may have already said this in the video, I've already forgotten what I said at the beginning. Yona is one of the strongest, one of the best written strong female characters I've read. In a world full of literature and media with really bad attempts at the strong female character, and she just ends up being aggressive, abrasive, and unlikable. Because apparently the way to write a strong woman is just to give her all the strength and all the muscle and all the ability, and to also make her really egotistical. So like she can just tell off anyone, be really abrasive, tell everybody in the room, hey, I could kill you just by looking at you. That's how good I am. And then like, it's just, okay, anyway, sorry. In a world full of a lot of media with attempts at strong female characters, Yona takes the cake. She is surrounded by strong men who want to protect her, and she leans on them and appreciates them. But she also learns to stand up on her own and to fight for herself. She comes so far in her resolve to take her life into her own hands and protect herself and her people. But we also see how broken and affected she is by the things done to her. We see her become strong and independent while still being happy to depend on others and still being delicate. She has a found family around her. She has a group of people that she travels with, that she learns with, that she grows with. And her being strong doesn't mean that she's better at everything than all of them. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't need them and she has to deliver some sort of speech to prove that she doesn't need anyone in her life. Instead, she leans on her crew. She leans on the people that are there as her support, but she always shines because she also has her own specific set of skills, be it her compassion, be it her ability to strategize, be it her tenacity to stand up with a bow and take out the leader of the ring who's handling the things. You know what I'm talking about with Green Dragon when we first met him? She doesn't flinch, she doesn't hesitate, but she also doesn't refuse help and she doesn't refuse to feel. She goes through so much in this series and we watch her work through those emotions. We watch her feel pain. We watch her feel betrayal. We watch her have to get knocked down time and time again and continue to stand up and utilize her own specific skills as well as allowing the team around her to use theirs, and they move forward as a team while always still acknowledging her as their leader. Yona has some of the most extraordinary character growth, and it's so slow and soft that there were times while reading it that something would happen and I would just be in awe at how far she's come, but I could look back and see the small moments that built up to this. It's so well written. I adore Yona. I love her so much. Now that we've gotten some positives out of the way, allow me to complain a little bit more because as I said, even though around volume 13 around volume 5 I got attached to Yona. That's when I was like, okay, I see a lot coming for her. I see a lot in her and I cared about her, the character. But it was around 13 that I was actually hooked. Even then, there were some highs and some lows. So allow me to continue to warn you if you're getting into the series because I have told you that it's extraordinary. Because it is. Allow me to warn you a little bit more about some of the rougher points for me, and if you happen to be a similar reader to me, someone who is not necessarily familiar or enjoys some of the tropes that show up in the series, let me warn you so that you can know, so that you can enjoy the good stuff. The initial volumes, the beginning volumes when we're still setting stuff up, lean really heavily on painting this as if it's going to be a romance. in the most annoying way, I thought. Everyone Yona meets seemingly falls in love with her, be it the people that we collect as part of our crew. They all seem to just be infatuated with her, more so than just, you know, this dragon magical, like we're all supposed to be together, so we're drawn together. More than that. Even characters that just meet her for a moment, they're like, I can't stop thinking about her. Why is she still on my mind? Like, it's almost comedic. It's so ridiculous how much everyone falls in love with her. I think it's because the mangaka is allowing readers to ship her with anyone. Like, everybody that shows up on the scene, you could say, hey, maybe that one. I hated it. I've been told that this is a trope for the shoujo category. Maybe it's just me not being well read in this category. I hated it. But I want to be clear that even though the mangaka leans heavily into this, I guess is the point of tension or the point of trying to draw reader interest while she's setting the pieces for an extraordinary story, I want to be clear that that's really not what the focus of the story is. In fact, the romance just is not the focus of the story at all. And good thing, because when everything calms down and we focus on just Yona and one person, I don't like that either. Again, I'm not a romance reader, so I do not reflect how the fandom responds to this romance. I can only speak to my personal experience, but I don't like heavily leaning on miscommunication to the point that it's like, come on. Like, come on, Yona, you're not that dumb. You have to understand he likes you. And the will they, won't they, that's so extreme that like multiple times I was like, finally they're together so we can just move on. And then it's like, oh no, they're actually not. Again, the romance doesn't get a lot of focus on the series. The series does so many things extraordinarily, and I'm going to talk about more. I mostly have just talked about Yona and how incredibly she's written, but there's more to talk about. Let me just finish this rant real quick and then we'll get into it. It does so many things extraordinarily, and the romance does not get the main focus or even like the secondary or tertiary focus. But when it does step forward and the focus is on it again for a chapter or two, it just feels like we're rehashing the same conversations and the same plot points and devices over and over and over again. And I just got really, really irritated by it. Again, I don't reflect how the fandom feels about this. I'm only speaking to my own personal experience, so take it as you will. I just want to be super clear that if you happen to be irritated by these things too, this is not a focus. Don't let the beginning of the series fool you. Okay, let's get into the good stuff again, because I love the way the action is written in this series. I'm gonna put panels on the screen for this part as well, but these are actually going to be spoilery. This is the one part of the video where the on-screen stuff will have spoilers, so you can still listen to my voice. My voice is gonna be perfectly fine, and I'll just tell you when it's safe to look at the screen again. The action in this series is beautifully drawn, never drags on, it's brilliantly paced, but it's also emotionally visceral, because while we can have small scale battles or entire wars, the focus is always on the individual. It's always focused on the characters, not just the hype. You can look at the screen now. The screen no longer has spoilers. You're just looking at me again. So, I mean, you can keep looking away. Do your dishes. There's certain plot points in the story that cause us to know that certain characters are probably going to be fine in each battle. But the series is able to maintain tension because the things at stake aren't just death. The focus is on what this battle costs them emotionally, physically, the suffering that they have to endure in order to get through this and in order to protect one another. Again, a big theme in this story is found family and on sacrifice and on devotion, and we see that in the action so strongly in how much they lean on each other and how much they protect one another and how much they step in to be the one to take the pain so that the others don't have to suffer. And the focus, while the action panels are drawn excellently, and the action doesn't take a back seat. Like, there's a full-blown war that we work through in this story, but the emphasis is on the suffering, not on the hype. And so even though there are certain elements to the story that could break tension, because in your mind you could be like, everybody's gonna be fine, this is too early in the story for, you know, that person to die or something like that, the tension is still so strong because we still see them go through so much more. And there were multiple scenes throughout this series that I was just weeping over. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I became so emotionally invested in these characters, and they go through so much in this series that there were times that I just like, I've shed many tears over one character in particular, and I just want him to stop having to suffer. Along with the very emotionally intense, and again, the action is written excellently. If you're just into hype moments, they're there. But along with the excellently written action, the quiet moments are also so well written when they just set camp and they have their inter-family, inter-crew dynamics. They bicker. They just, their personalities just do not fit exactly right, and they are constantly going back and forth, and it's funny, and I love it. You can go from two characters bickering back and forth and fighting and getting easily riled up like a Zoro Sanji kind of dynamic, and then immediately in the next scene, the other one will do anything to protect that one that they were just bickering with, much like a Zoro Sanji dynamic. I love the found family trope, and the found family trope in this series shines. Not only that, the characters get really well fleshed out backstories. We get to see where they come from, what they've been through before we meet them in the story, and how that affects how they move forward and how they interact with the world today. We get to see some amazing political maneuverings where this world is really big, and there's a lot more set pieces than just Yona, her kingdom, and the leadership there. There's so much going on between the different tribes, between the different leaders of those tribes, between the smaller factions of like people within small villages and the hierarchies that have been built there, and how that plays into everything. So much moving around that also is really well set up and has some incredible payoff. As we move on, the world just continues to get bigger, and the political maneuverings continue to get deeper and richer, as well as the characters and their personal arcs and their personal interactions with each other, as well as new characters that continue to come in as we enter a new space and we see new people, how they work into everything. It just keeps getting deeper. This really is a series that as you progress, it just keeps getting better. It's genuinely a brilliant series, and one that I probably would have given up on really quickly if the people in my Discord didn't encourage me. Like, no, it really does. Like, just give it a little bit longer, because you may not find the beginning as difficult as I did. It just leaned into a lot of tropes and pacing issues that I personally really, really struggle with, so I would have bounced off of it really quickly. But I'm so glad I didn't, because it has become such an extraordinary series. And I really want to hype it. I know that there's probably not, at least within the people that read the same things as me, the people that have probably, you know, come around me on this channel, probably this video won't be interesting to a lot of people. But for those who are willing to click, I really want to encourage you to give it a go if anything I said sounds interesting, because it's great. I really do think it's well worth the read. It's a series that's very far outside of my comfort zone and very far outside of what I would think that I would be interested in. And it's fantastic, at least to me. That's what I think. If you have read it, please feel free to share your personal take on it, what it is about the series that makes it great to you. If you haven't read it and now you think you might give it a go, let me know. I'd love to hear. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on the book channel, which is always linked in the description. You can check it out if you like. I'll see you again soon. Bye.